Good evening, everyone. Thank you, AIM, for this opportunity today. I'm Monica Kothari, an IT professional with over 20 years of experience while working with tech giants like Amazon, Yahoo, and Informatica. I'm also an artist and founder of Dare to Express. As far as this webinar is concerned, I bring expertise from developing AI products at Amazon and also some current consulting experience with a couple of organizations who are venturing into, Gen AI space. This session is driven by my personal interest and a commitment to ongoing learning and also sharing the same. I welcome you all to this webinar where we'll dive into the emerging world of responsible AI and understand how can we harness the potential of this, powerful technology, game-changing technology, while staying responsible and ethical. Uh, but before we plunge into the depths of responsible AI, let's start with a quick reality check. I have, collected some eye-opening data about how Gen AI will reshape economy and jobs across various industries, which might change the way you think about AI's influence on our lives. Let me just show you that. This graph on the left, is a research done by Accenture on work distribution analysis, and it depicts how Gen AI will transform work across every single industry, ranging from banking, tech, retail to chemicals and life sciences. The purple and the green bars that you see, they depict that almost 50% of the work that we do today has a high potential for automation and augmentation. And what would this mean for you? So in future, you can, we already are doing this and you can picture yourself having a co-pilot in your daily tasks. It could be crafting emails or gathering data for trends, coding, forecasting, planning, content creation, and the like. On the right side, there are some more statistics that I would like to highlight. Gen AI is projected to influence 40% of the working hours with a substantial adoption trend. So almost 6 in 10 organizations are planning to use ChatGPT for learning and other experimentation. I'm sure your organizations are doing that. And 4 in 10 are aiming for larger investments, with 98% of global executives looking for these models to play an important role in their organization strategies in the next 3 to 5 years. Also, look at on the top right corner, look at the job postings, AI related job postings, which rose to 22% in the past quarter. And then at the bottom right corner, the monetization specifically, Gen AI is set to add up almost $4.4 trillion of value to the global economy annually, according to a report from McKinsey. All of this is like astonishing in my just in like past 6 months or 1 year, we have just things changed so drastically. But even as I'm excited about this optimistic future ahead, I'm also convinced that we need to build these tools very ethically and responsibly. We also saw that during this whole year, government or industries or researchers, policymakers, all of these guys were exceptionally concerned about the speed with which this technology is growing exponentially, and also the potential ways it could actually perpetuate bias, could make the world unequal, and could actually do so in ways that are invisible to us. The impact of AI reaches, far beyond the algorithms and the lines of code. It touches people's lives and can affect the very fabric of our society. So, in today's webinar, that is where, we will navigate the Gen AI landscape, understanding some common terms, and dive into the risks, challenges, and best practices and frameworks that pioneers like Google or Microsoft are already using for building products using Gen AI. And of course, what role can you play, whether you are a business owner or, in engineering developing these solutions, or a consumer who uses these solutions to improve his day-to-day life? Let's quickly talk about a few basic terms to get everyone on the same page. So, generative AI, it is kind of a form of creative artificial intelligence that can create content using natural language input. Like, unlike the primitive AI, where we simply analyzed or classified the existing data, generative AI actually can generate something entirely new, whether it's text or images, audios, videos, any model. And it uses technologies like deep learning, reinforcement learning, transformers, and the like. Then there is ChatGPT. I'm presuming everyone has experienced it. ChatGPT, developed by OpenAI, is an advanced language model which is built on GPT, Generative Pre-trained Transformer Architecture. You can ask it to explain a subject, write an essay, run a calculation, generate some Python code, or simply, have a conversation. Then there is another term, foundation models. Uh, these are models like BERT, DALI, GPT-4, and these are complex machine learning systems trained on vast quantities of data. It could be text, images, audio, and it's done on massive scale. The the important part is that, and which is what we'll talk about in next of the terms, is that these models can be fine-tuned and customized to any enterprise's requirements. And then there is large language models, or LLMs. These represent a subset of these foundation models. Again, these have been pre-trained on extensive data sets, but can understand, summarize, and generate high quality text. So the GPT, the chat GPT that we used had GPT-3 and other GPTs earlier from OpenAI was almost trained on 500 billion words from millions of websites. And its successor, GPT-4, is multimodal and can take images as well as text as well. There are others which are DALI and Stable Diffusion. These are image generation models. And there is BARD by Google, Llama by Meta. So all the big tech companies, have one or at least two proprietary models that they own. Then there is fine tuning. So it is a very common practice these days where a foundation model is retrained for specific tasks to adapt to your requirements. For example, you can transform the foundation model, to generate content for medical queries by refining its understanding for medical language or concepts. So, in any field like say healthcare or law related, any field that we have, the models can be retrained to the terminologies that we use in those particular fields. There's prompt engineering. So, prompt engineering is a technique for developing and optimizing the prompts to efficiently use LLMs. So, it's like simply whatever you give as an input to any instruction that you're giving to, let's say, ChatGPT, so that it is making it better at understanding and answering questions and getting the responses you want in your context. Then there is prompt engineers, which is claimed to be an emerging role in Gen AI world. And there are various courses available in the market to make you professional around this. All right. So the next thing that we will be discussing is, specifically the Gen AI risks. As they say, with great power comes great responsibility. This is an important aspect for everybody to understand, whether you are an individual or an organization. So generally, like while I'm consulting and I'm speaking to executives today, there is a lot of enthusiasm and excitement to get started with Gen AI, right? Nobody wants to miss the bus. But they're still hesitant about the challenges associated with implementing generative AI, not to mention the dramatic headlines that they're claiming the end of humanity, right, as we know it. So it is, like I said, it's very important to understand these risks so that we can effectively navigate and address the challenges that come with this powerful technology. Before I move on, there's a small disclaimer here that throughout this discussion from now on, you will hear me using terms like AI and Gen AI interchangeably. So the reason being that Gen AI falls into the whole broader spectrum of AI. A lot of things are common for both. There's some peculiarities definitely for Gen AI, which weren't there for primitive AI. For example, Gen AI kind of amplifies the risks which were existing earlier due to its ability to generate diverse outputs, right? Something that we don't have a control on. I will cover them too as we go forward. All right, just a moment. Yeah. So then there is, there are many risks apart from these, but these are the most important ones. So let's talk about them, one by one. On the left side are actually the direct risks. On the right side, more of like indirect risks. So what I mean by that is, with the model, with the data, whatever you have as an input itself, there is a lot of risk which comes with that. So those are the ones where the user is directly impacted, are the direct risks, and indirect ones are that, you will come across that with time. So let's talk about deepfakes and misinformation. This was something that was going viral on social media last week with a celebrity video, which was an identity theft and not actually the person themselves. So you can consider the idea of deep fakes as tools that might create a persona or avatar that's pretending to be the trusted person in your organization, giving fraudulent information to your customers or even, advising them to take potentially risky courses of actions. That is something is possible with this technology. Uh, then second is hallucinations. You can call it as error with confidence. There are many examples in the news already where these systems, when they don't know the answers, right, they will just come up with their own story, which seems to be factual, but actually it is not. So, for example, ChatGPT invented a sexual harassment scandal about a real law professor, which started to make rounds on social media before it was debunked. And it was a very bad instance, unfortunate example of hurting someone's reputation at the extreme. I encountered it while I was preparing for this presentation, wherein, I asked ChatGPT to help me with the fairness evaluation toolkits that are present today in the market. And three of them were right. And the fourth one, it came up on its own, telling me something like OpenAI's fairness evaluation toolkit. And it looked so convincing. I actually put it on my slides, and later on, I when I checked it, I realized there's nothing like that which exists. So it's very, very important that we understand that these systems do not give us, they're just stochastic parrots, as some people say, that whatever data they have, they're just trying to get something out of it, and based on the temperature of that particular model or settings that you have put in, it can actually come up with amazing creative outputs which are very convincing. Then there is bias and discrimination. So very, very key. This used to exist in primitive AI, and now it is even more prevalent. So AI picks up biases from the data it's trained on, right? Data is the source for every AI model. And the funny part is, whatever we have in society, whatever human prejudices and biases that are found in that data, obviously it is going to be there. All of that are actually mirroring up now. So, to give you an example, when I was working with Amazon in 2014 or 15, around the time frame, Amazon had come up with a HR tool which was based on AI. So they were using the data sets that were skewed heavily male. And they ended up scrapping their hiring tool because it started discriminating against women. And the AI could not unlearn the bias that it had developed. So yes, it's very critical risk that needs to be addressed. Right at the first level when you are collecting the data, there's a good amount of work that has to be done there itself at the data layer. Then the fourth one is societal impact. So as we see, right, GenAI has the potential to reshape our society, influencing how we work, we communicate, and make decisions. So there are, a lot of issues which people are worried about, humanists are worried about, is it can deepen the social inequalities, polarize our society. There can be more cultural biases which can actually, happen when we are using these technologies, and there will be unintended consequences on marginal communities. So, a lot of the world still doesn't have internet, right? And whatever we are building, whatever data we are getting is from the countries and from the places where there is internet. So, you are already, whatever data that you have, you are already using only a fraction of the whole population, which through which you are building these tools. So there is a good amount of societal impact which can happen, and we all need to be at least aware of this when we build these tools or we use these tools. Then there is explainability or transparency on the right side. So one of the things is that these models are very complex, and it's difficult to understand how these models actually arrive at a specific decision, which is critical for gaining the trust of customers, right? So this has become even more difficult with Gen AI as compared to primitive AI, because there is a whole black box nature of these models because they are built on deep neural networks along with billions of parameters, right? Every single day, the new model comes in new version, and it is with way more parameters than before because that's what makes it efficient. So it's difficult to explain the outputs, which raises the concerns about accountability and ethical use. So this is also, again, a very key risk that comes across. Then there is copyright issues. These are the issues about ownership. Who owns the idea of the product that are created by Gen AI, right? So a big discussion on artists and the creative communities, professions, with many lawsuits which are running today. Um, Beyond ownership disputes, there are broader legal concerns also. So, for example, if AI produces a content that infringes on copyright or violates the law, who is actually responsible? Is it the creator, the AI developer, or the organization employing the AI, or the third party whose model actually we are using. Right. So a lot of these issues are still under discussion. Then there is security. These models are complex enough that there is a significant degree of memorization which goes on in the training set when you're training these models with a lot of data. So there is a term in the ML world, AI ML world, which is called as overfitting, right? So the model kind of memorizes things to bring out the outputs that it has to. So this implies that, if I am exposing today a document to these models, and if that's the confidential data of my enterprise, and it is going to a third party because I am kind of training that particular model, then they may in fact incorporate it in their future versions which come out. So I'm kind of, my confidentiality of the data is at stake. Then there is another security risk which is being spoken about is called as prompt injection, where an attacker strategically crafts the prompts to manipulate and distort the AI model's output. So these are all um, these are all important security vulnerabilities that we need to prevent in some or the other form, be it data breaches which are happening, or let's say system compromises, or any of the malicious activities which malicious actors are actually trying to jailbreak into our systems. Then there is last one is privacy. So you know so basically what happens is, whatever data you are using, if there is personally identifiable information, it could be the customer's his personal details, or your client's personal data or red data, for example. So if at all, as part of the input process, it should not become part of your training data set. If it becomes part of your training data set, um, then your basically organization is actually getting exposed to compliance risks and legal liabilities, damaging the organization's reputation. And the same is the case with the output also that is being generated by these systems. So we could give you an example here. Like if you have doctors who are using ChatGPT to write clinical notes, right? And while they are doing it, they might unintentionally violate HIPAA compliance by putting patients' information into, let's say, ChatGPT. And that's why there's a disclaimer on ChatGPT all the time that they say that please do not share your personal information in the chat conversations. And let's say developers who are using, let's say, GitHub Copilot, right? They can accidentally contribute proprietary data of their company to the model. So yeah, these are, a couple of risks which are very key, especially with the advent of Gen AI. We all need to be aware of. And I'm hoping that like we've understood some of the potential risks, and we like, yes, these are there. We are aware of these challenges, but we need to focus on, again, proactive measures. Any technology so far that we have evolved into, right? We've always had uh, ways to combat the issues, right? So let's look at, some proactive measures, something like responsible AI, which is the topic of today. Basically, this is like a guiding light that can steer us towards ethical and responsible use or development or deployment of these AI solutions. Yeah, so what is responsible AI? So currently, whatever I was researching so far, I saw there is no universal definition of responsible AI, nor like there is a simple checklist or formula that defines how responsible AI practices should be implemented. What is happening is every organization is developing its own principles and their own frameworks that align with their mission and their values. So for somebody, some principle might be important, bias and discrimination is important. So for somebody, inclusiveness is very important, say, for example. So it's kind of all over the place. But I just came up with a generic definition here, and I will share also a compiled list of principles in the next slide that we can talk about. So, responsible AI is the practice of designing, developing, and deploying AI in a safe, legal, and ethical way, in accordance with clear principles to empower not only businesses, but respect people and also benefit society. These are important things that any organization who's building these um, tools or technology has to take care of. So, there are, few core principles for responsible AI that kind of extend beyond just the technical aspects, right? And also focus on the organizational and cultural dimensions of the AI adoption. So any organization can utilize these principles while defining their own AI strategy. I've kind of listed six, but there are kind of more, and this whole space is evolving. So, keep checking out what more gets added. So the first one is accountability and professional responsibility. So anyone who designs, develops, or deploys the AI system has a professional responsibility towards not only its customers, but also society. So if you are in a team who is doing this, you are equally responsible. So it is important that, the organization kind of work with a range of stakeholders who would critically question and evaluate the AI system right from the start, where they actively consider the long term and the societal impact also, and also responsibly act on those considerations which come across, even if it means that you are not designing the AI system due to its potential risks. So dropping an AI system or problem should not be an issue if it doesn't align with uh, you know the other parts of societal and ethical issues. Then there is fairness and non-discrimination. So we kind of spoke about this already in the risks in the last slide. So AI should treat everyone equally, avoiding the biases or discrimination based on personal characteristics. So which can occur, if your training data is skewed or has some sort of imbalances in the sample size, or it lacks diversity in the relevant features. So all of those has to be taken care of. Then the third one is transparency and explainability. Again, we spoke about this. Let me give an example, like for a bank, that might use an AI system to decide whether a person is credit worthy. They should be able to explain the customer why his loan was not approved. So just relying on a system who just tells you that this customer is not eligible, uh, you know, uh, is not right. Like the other day, I was looking at one of the LinkedIn posts where somebody had posted that their account was actually disabled from one of the um, online software website, saying that he doesn't know, like, why am I because of their advertising policies or something of that sort, and there was no explanation even when the person reached out. Just because the system gave an answer, we should not take it, right? So organizations should focus on mechanisms to promote appropriate processes and tools which are related to model development and deployment. So, for example, MS Azure has a responsible AI dashboard and a scorecard. And one can look at the global and local model behavior to understand how the model has come to that particular decision. So, it's not that we do have tools which are helping us to do this. And then the fourth one is the human control and judgment. So, um, see, I mean, yes, these models are effective and pretty good in giving the responses or stuff that we want, but it is very important to strike the right balance between AI and human judgment. So there can be, like, high stake decision makings, for example, in healthcare. And it could mean that, a doctor should review the tests or diagnosis which are suggested by AI before passing it to the patients. So there are multiple approaches to this. This kind of an involvement, could mean that you have a human in the loop where humans play an active role in the decision making process alongside the AI system. Or, you could use other mechanisms like human on the loop or human over the loop approaches also, based on what kind of use case. But humans, you know, human control and judgment is very important when we are building these solutions. We'll talk about RLHF and other things which, while coming up with these foundation models, OpenAI has used that as one of the important techniques. And the fifth one is privacy and security. We already spoke about this in risks, and we'll talk a little more about it when we discuss the framework in the next slide. Then sixth one is reliability and safety. So very, very key to build the trust. Your AI systems must operate reliably and safely and consistently also. So any software system for the matter, right? Similar to that. So developers can actually implement again continuous testing and monitoring to assess whether an AI system is performing reliably through tools, feedback mechanism surveys, or user experience evaluations. For high-risk systems, for example, like self-driving cars, developers should implement, AI risk or impact assessment to identify potential safety risks and necessary mitigations. This is very, very key. Somewhere where I was reading the Microsoft's responsible AI framework, where they have this thing where the first step is to identify, and that's where the reliability and safety will be become very, very important. That you think about this when you are designing the system, when you have come up with a use case, you think about not only the things which you want from that system, but very importantly in these kind of systems, you need to think about where it can go wrong, what kind of harmful impact can it have when users are using these systems. So on the negative scale of the testing, a lot of effort right from the start has to be implemented so that the systems are reliable and safe to use. All right. So now that we know there, these are some of the principles that I spoke about. Um, the next question arises is that how would your organization put these principles into practice to make clear and ethical decisions while building products using Gen AI? There are many frameworks that allow you to think responsibly and ethically while you design these products. This is a framework which I looked at a couple of them and I found, these 4 or 5 pillars which looked important to me. So I've put that out. And it's good for both technologists and non-technologists. So let's talk about this. There are 5 pillars of this framework: strategy, people, governance, control and monitoring, and responsible data practices. Not in any order of priority. I just put them out based on the space which was looking fine on the slide. So let's talk about each of these. So first is the strategy. So very important, your organization and any organization's leaders need to come up with a well-defined holistic strategy after performing the risk analysis from the very start, right? Which would mean that you identify core principles which are important for your organization. You define clear objectives. You put out people impact. You put out process transformations, or let's say infrastructure upgrades, or anything which would be which would mean your holistic strategy. Risks, what kind of risks will come in for the use cases that you're looking at. So basically, they must determine whether to revamp the existing offerings, or you want to create new revenue business models, or let's say you want to reshape the workforce with new skills, right? All of these things have to be figured out. Sorry. Um, the other thing is, where should Gen AI be applied, right? So you should be very cautious, because if you have a hammer, everything can start looking like a nail. So Gen AI is not like a one size fits all solution for all AI related tasks. Where is it most effective is when you want a good starting point, like creating the first draft quickly rather than something very accurate. For example, you could just save some significant time to generate that first draft of a sales plan using Gen AI, which you could then enhance with your own personal insights later. So, but if you kind of need like precise and verifiable outcomes, like financial reports, for example, Gen AI might not be a ideal pick here. As part of the strategy, another important thing is sustainability. Um, Organizations need to use sustainable practices by integrating the environmental, social, and economic considerations as well into the entire AI development lifecycle. So, for example, minimizing the carbon footprint associated with AI infrastructure and operations with these huge, large GPUs or TPUs that we're going to use. One thing that I forgot to mention on the slide, but which was also more important, is to define how do you want to measure also, right? When you need to really figure out when you are what use cases you're looking at and how would you measure, what kind of metrics are you looking at in terms of uh, you know the success of these Gen AI systems. Then the second key aspect is people. For any project, a multidisciplinary team with diverse expertise, including AI specialists, your data scientists, ethicists, legal professionals, and domain experts. All of these need to be there. It'll be a very good way to ensure that you are doing responsible development. And this team should have a well rounded understanding of the AI technologies, without doubt, responsible considerations, things that you're learning right now, legal frameworks, and the specific domains in which this AI is going to be deploying. Um, what I read about was, for example, Microsoft has defined like RAI focus groups, These are like central groups, central orgs, which are dedicated to their core RAI principles. And what do they do is they play a key role in developing tools, best practices, and tailored implementation guidance related to their respective areas of expertise. So having centralized groups, which are governance groups or responsible AI groups in a way, is a very good way in larger organizations to do this. There's another thing which I came across and which already exists today in our industry, right? Red teams. So red teaming is a strategy that is often used to find security vulnerabilities in a system. So you can extend this existing team to find harmful content from generative AI. So basically, you can implement a responsible AI process that builds on and complements the existing cybersecurity practices that you have. And the another important aspect is prioritizing the skills transformation in terms of not only the technical aspects. Yes, you will need to learn the technical aspects for people who are developing these solutions. Very important is the ethical considerations as well. So training the employees who design or use the AI systems to understand models and data sources, identifying the bias in the data sets or AI recommendations that are coming out, or let's say privacy protection, or reporting performance issues. And this must go beyond the AI developers and data scientists, and be it employees, other employees, stakeholders, and the entire wider community should be actually trained on this. I kind of also recommend, which is a best practice, is that you can create an internal resource that includes guidelines, best practice documents, your case studies, and examples of responsible AI implementation. The next pillar is governance. So this is a very important pillar. So top leadership should define and lead an organization's responsible AI principles, translating them into effective governance structure, right? Once you identify, you have to have a governance structure in place to the ground level. So this structure involves creating clear policies and guidelines, aligning with legal requirements, ethical norms, and regulatory compliance or industry standards that we have. So these governance frameworks should adapt to changing the leader landscapes, which is happening very fast in this space right now. And it can also involve, like, a lot of companies are having ethics review board. For example, Google has it, which is, these boards are overseeing the entire AI project, evaluating the risks and monitoring the ethical implications of those. So that's about governance. And there is control and monitoring mechanisms. So we need accountability, like we spoke. There has to be continuous testing and monitoring mechanisms to understand potential unintended issues and then put controls in place to mitigate them. So obviously rigorous testing and pilots before you deploy these solutions, conduct the regular audits on the AI system, and monitoring AI systems for model drift and decay over time, also building human control mechanisms like we spoke, and implementing the accountability processes for employees, right? Whoever is part of that cycle is equally accountable to make sure that they develop the thing responsibly. And then there is, establishing guardrails, right? So it's basically it involves defining the boundaries and constraints for an AI model, both in terms of the input data and also the output response which comes. So I came across this where Bing kind of applies the external guardrails. So like a second model that looks at the output of the first LLM and decides whether the output which is coming from the first one is acceptable or not. So in case of, let's say, a death threat or any other harmful output which comes in, the LLM model actually outputs the threat, and the second model evaluates it as harmful content and removes it. So that ways you can put these kind of guardrails, the output layer. Other way could be to use Azure's OpenAI services, content filters. So a very neat content filter support system that applies criteria to suppress the prompts and responses based on the classification of the content into different categories of harms or severity. Very neat feature. So that could be another way. They have APIs available. You could use that. And you can also apply input output validation at UI layer, which is the first layer that the consumer comes across. So you can constrain the inputs to specific subjects there itself. You can use meta prompts, for example, like open AI's APIs, or the playground that we have. It allows us to provide like a system parameter that you see, which sets the behavior of the model. You can tell ChatGPT to, let's say, act like a marketing consultant and, not give verbose output, or not give, stick to what you want as an output, right? So those kind of system parameters are good. Then the last one is responsible data practices. So any AI product is only as ethical as the underlying data that it is trained on, right? So if the majority of our customers today have been on a particular race or gender, when we train AI on that particular data, we'll continue to design products and services that only serve that particular population. So as you're deploying any new tool, you should ask, what is the source of this training data? How might the data perpetuate historic bias which has been there? And what can I do to mitigate this bias in the data? So organizations should incorporate representative data sets encompassing a wide range of perspectives, backgrounds, demography, which can help mitigate bias. So data has to be really good. And second thing is, it's also crucial to implement bias mitigation techniques. When your data is right, great. But every time you retrain, right? So there has to be bias mitigation techniques throughout the development and deployment of AI systems, which would mean that you can pre-process the data to mitigate biases and implement some post-processing techniques to promote fair and calibrated AI outputs. And similarly for models, there needs to be tools, mechanisms, and processes throughout the development cycle to ensure transparency and fairness. Fine-tuning the foundation models using your own training data, or using RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation technique, to retrieve the contextual data from trusted data sources can ensure that the model's outputs are in accordance with the scope of your problem. Mm, yeah, and definitely organizations should consider applicable privacy laws and regulations, which could include data collection, data processing, and usage restrictions. Um, Developers may implement privacy by design features, such as data minimization is very key, like collecting and processing only personal data that is necessary. And for security, you could anonymize the data, encrypt the data, and maybe access controls, which we already implement, can be implemented. All right. So this slide, is just a quick, I came across this Microsoft RAI core principles. That is what they use. And I would encourage you guys to go and take a look at their framework as well. And yeah, then what is already being done? So basically here, I just want to share mechanisms and tools which are available today for you to build responsible products. And I've just put it in 4 different areas. So there is AI documentation, there is fairness evaluation tools, there is responsible AI training toolkits, and then governance policies which are being worked upon. So Gen AI documentation, right? So the private and the public sector both have promoted documentation of AI development process. This is not new, was already there. These document strategies support the responsible AI principles of transparency, accountability, reliability and safety, fairness. And there are many documentation mechanisms and tools available, which you can put for various layers, like at the model layer, the data layer, the system layer. So most companies, who are coming up with this public foundation models, always disclose model cards for their models, sharing the crucial information about these AI models, detailing their performance, or let's say their intended use, their limitations and potential biases. So when you look at these model cards, you can make an informed decision regarding its deployment, that whether this fits into your use case, what is not being covered, where you see problems and things like those. So, for example, IBM fact sheets and Google's model card, they record the purpose, performance, safety, security, provenance of AI models. And the data layer, Microsoft data sheets are there that can be used for data sets to document data provenance. Again, entire thing on composition, collection processes, what was the motivation and recommended uses on the data layer side. So it's very crucial to review and understand the provided documentation thoroughly if you're planning to use these models. Or if you're coming up with your own proprietary model, your company is doing that, you can again use these model cards to, as an AI documentation, which is the best practice to do that. Then there are fairness evaluation toolkits. So the private sector has already created a variety of fairness evaluation toolkits to check data in, AI models for biases. So there's IBM's AI Fairness 360 toolkit, which tests the data sets and models for bias, and also, uh, you know, uh, provides recommended algorithms. Then there is Microsoft's Interpret ML and Amazon SageMaker, and there's Amazon's one more thing, which is I'm just forgetting the name. So, anyways, Amazon SageMaker Clarify can be applied to machine learning models, again, to check models' interpretability and how it has come to a certain decision. So, you can see all of that. Google's What If tool is there, which also enables developers and the public to identify and test the predictive features in ML models without really needing a deep technical expertise, and whether these features actually contribute to bias. Um, then there are responsible AI training toolkits. So, training toolkits, your guides, your courses, webinars like this one can help organizations train their staff to identify and mitigate the potential risks of AI. The numerous trainings and RAI toolkits which have been established, such as Google Google's People Plus AI Guidebook. You should check that out. Or Ethical OS Toolkit, which was developed by Institute for the Future and Omidyar Network. These toolkits, basically what they do is they enable stakeholders, such as PMs, the developers, or end users, to understand the benefits and risks of AI and encourage discussions for responsible AI in their own, bubble. So, Microsoft Learn is another one. It has come up with Gen AI courses and certifications too. So, you should check that out too. Then governance policies. I won't go through every each one of them, but basically, uh, what is happening is a lot of progress is being made. I think 15, like 3 weeks ago, I think UK government had organized a conference where they kind of invited all of the leaders from these key companies, Amazon, Google, or let's say Elon Musk from Twitter, and all of those, to talk about what are the issues which are there for responsible AI and also the UK Act and things like those. So companies at their level are voluntarily implementing these assessments as a mechanism to reduce the legal risks which is associated with liability and negligence if an AI system causes harms, right? So it's beneficial for them. These policies basically consist of questions around evaluating data and design risks and nature or scale and likelihood of harmful aspects in technology and governance related parts. There are many existing AI ethics guidelines and government acts and regulations, and these were existing for primitive AI, and now they are being considered for updation to include Gen AI related regulatory compliance clauses. Then I think, yeah, one of the pioneer there is UK, European Union, where they have basically they've come up with Artificial Intelligence Act as well, which requires developers of high risk AI systems, to implement a conformity assessment. So you can't just build something like that. You have to, follow the whole process of impact assessment and all. And then many large companies are coming up with AI ethics boards and explainability related parts like Google's AI ethics board, explainable AI, etc. Then, yeah. So to conclude, like, what can you do, right? So if you are an organization, you should define your RAI strategy. First thing is to define it. You should include again a set of principles like the ones we covered earlier. If an organization puts fairness and non-discrimination as one of the prioritized core principles, then you as a leader should encourage its developers to conduct robust testing to identify the biases, correct these biases before they are deployed. Then building compliance early, can anyways provide a competitive and advantage. And the more the organizations which are actually doing this in a right way from the start will evolve faster with the evolving policies. So if you're an individual who is working in an organization on a team where you are developing AI systems, you should align and commit to implementing the RAI strategy in all aspects of your work. So if it's not happening, compliance is not there, speak up. Identify ways to make it compliant. If it cannot be compliant, let's say due to technology, constraint, or let's say data or any other constraint which is there, you may need to advocate that the AI system should not be designed or implemented, right? So that's important. Also, if your org doesn't have an RAI strategy at all, I really encourage you to speak up to your leadership to establish one. Most large companies like Google, Microsoft, IBM, Amazon have a responsible AI implementation strategy that is publicly available. So it's a good idea to go and take a look And I will leave some links in the next slide for you to check out as a follow up to understand these things in more details. And then, last but not the least, is learn. So, learn about the evolving space of Gen AI and how to implement it responsibility for the highest good of all. So, yeah, these are few resources that you can refer to for understanding more. And then this is good amount of detail in terms of what kind of frameworks are there today. And there is Microsoft certification on generative AI, which I would recommend. And also check out, some of the trainings from Google and deeplearning.ai by Andrew Ng, really good ones. I also found some good trainings on LinkedIn Learning for responsible AI. So yeah, those are the things that you can do as a follow up. Cool. I guess I'm kind of done with the whole presentation, and I'm open to questions. How can businesses and developers, Krishna Rastogi asked that, how can business and developers stay informed about the latest advancements and guidelines, right, to continually adapt and enhance their practices? Yeah, this is exactly what you're doing if you're attending this webinar. So, like I said, I shared a lot of resources there. I would really encourage you to go and take some certifications over there on governance related parts also. Like, I mean, just responsible AI, knowing that itself would be a good idea. And at least in this webinar, I have shared a lot of details in terms of tools and things like those. So, yeah, those you should keep in touch. This is, I think AIM is doing really good job to have people connected with something like this. So, people do this. Okay, in the realm of generative AI, what emerging practices are being adopted to mitigate biases and ensure fairness in AI systems, especially considering the potential societal impacts? Very good question here. So, um, see, I mean, I like I shared, right? One of the most important thing when it comes to biases is, you know, ensuring the data that you have is right. So that is the first source of where the biases and where everything seeps in. So there are tools like I shared the fairness evaluation toolkits. So you should be able to see the more in the whole AI production development life cycle. Uh, what happens is the maximum time, I would say, like 70% of your time should go on data. That's what happens also if you're building a system, with a with whatever you expect to come out, right? So that's very, very key. So employ those. There are many strategies which are coming up in terms of like if you are using a Gen AI, Open AI's APIs or anything of that sort, the grounding of the prompts is one way. The you need to just make sure that won't really remove the biases as such, but putting these guardrails in place and making sure that the data is actually having a good representative set of your customer bases, or you have really holistically thought about. So like I said, have multidisciplinary teams. You should have legal, you should have ethics, you should have tech guys, all of these people together who kind of review these parts. Oh, Aparna says, could you provide examples of ethical dilemmas or challenges faced in the development and deployment of GenAI and how these are addressed? Oh, yeah, I mean, that's what this whole session was about. So, ethical dilemmas and challenges are many, wherein, like just hurting somebody's reputation by putting out a deep fake out there. Or let's say, today we have so much of data on internet, and so far we have been able to rely on that, saying that that is truthful data, right? So but now if you see videos coming out which are not, or which are not really true, then it's a really ethical issue in a way. Also, like I said, the whole bias and discrimination side of the things, where you are building products only for the minority of people because your data only has those, and you're designing systems keeping that only in mind, so you are completely polarizing the society in that way. So that is also not okay. Then again, copyright issues, right? I really don't know the image which is coming out from the system. Has it been is it the new creation which is coming out? What else has it used in terms of training? So am I actually infringing the copyright of that? So yeah, those are the other parts which are happening. Okay. Yeah. So okay, yeah. So how are these addressed? basically, like I said, this whole responsible AI webinar has a lot of things which are put out there to ensure that you have an ethics board and all of those parts. I'm hoping that has answered your question for now. And Sachin says, in the context of Gen AI, how can stakeholders collaborate to establish industry-wide standards for responsible AI development and deployment? So, see, how can stakeholders collaborate? So, within the organization, definitely there's going to be a collaboration. But let's say industry-wide standards, again, you will need people who know these standards, who are aware of these policies which are coming up again and again. So, you'll need to have legal and every AI project you have an ethics board which allows you to which allows you to do that. And like I said, you can have like a central org which is for responsible AI, right? And they are the ones who are the who kind of force the entire organization into a direction of making sure that we are building these products in the right way. As far as industry wide things are concerned, I think attending conferences, knowing all of these, and I'm presuming the legal guys already have this knowledge or are actually at par with all of that, so they're bringing those inputs into our the whole development life cycle. That could be one way, and otherwise, being in community related, all of these conferences and things like those would also help that how others are doing it, right? So many companies who have already done it, follow Microsoft, Google, and these people who are doing it today. Then, what role do regulatory frameworks play in shaping responsible generative AI? Also, what are the best practices for organizations to align with these regulations while fostering innovation? Okay, so yeah, I think I'm going to get back to you on this because regulatory framework, when I'm talking about, basically, again, it's more of like the policies and the legal side of the things, right? Or let's say you have ethicists in your um, teams. So I'm presuming that those are going to really bringing those insights. But I'm going to get back to you beyond this. I don't want to just say something which I'm not sure about. And can you share real world initiatives where responsible generative AI has been successfully implemented, leading to positive outcomes for individuals organized? Oh my God. So Rahul, yeah, um, excellent questions. So I think this is a very evolving space at this point, right? So I don't know if because let's say for example, ChatGPT, who is one of the things that we have all been using, right? But we all know that it is flawed in a way, right? So I wouldn't say that it is just there or it is just helping. It is just still helping us, but it comes with its own harmful impacts also, right? So um, benefits in terms of, if I see, definitely, if you are, let's say, an organization is making sure in terms of security and all these parts that we spoke about, right, in terms of responsibly implementing this, if those are done, there is employee productivity which can definitely be improved. So Amazon, or let's say Google or even Microsoft has, I was reading somewhere, specifically Microsoft, I was reading a lot about it. So they've spent a lot of effort on wide range of, use cases, from, let's say, employee productivity to, customer facing, customer service and things like those. So the entire cycle, it has definitely helped them, and they are the pioneers in a way, right? So I think it is benefiting the organizations in that sense. I also see, I read about, I was attending this one of the other um, discussion which Google had done recently in past 2 weeks, where they were talking about a lot of environment related. So let's say climate change, for example, and let's say on the agriculture side, right? So they are developing things which are on the entire society side of the things, right? So those initiatives are amazing, which I do not see have really harm anyone, right? So you should check out Google's initiatives on AI. Those I can definitely quote that they are being used today. Where is the link to resources? Okay, I'm going to share this on the channel. Um, yeah. Okay, what is the additional cost of responsibility? Yeah, it is. Definitely, there's a lot of cost. I mean, I can't just give you a number, but just imagine that, you as simple as having a complete resource alignment to ensure that you are developing the products responsibly, right? So you can have a central orgs in terms of human resources, you will need all of these people. Then in terms of infrastructure costs, right? You will need to think about all of these. If you are actually building your own proprietary models, then you will have to, think about a whole lot of infrastructure cost, which will come into play. If you're fine tuning, maybe for a simple use cases, then still okay. Then there is yeah, I mean, those are the two that I can think of which are very, very key. But I'm sure, like for any software lifecycle that you're implementing, there's a good amount of cost which will come into picture for this. How can we develop locally available data models using LLMs or expert systems focused on a very narrow area? Let us say Q&A for handling certain neurological issues for learning disabilities. So I don't understand this question. So we can develop locally available data models. So I'm presuming you have the data available with you, which is labeled data. So I'm just understanding this as a question where we are saying that we want to build a Q&A, like a chatbot or something, which could handle um, questions, maybe, yeah, questions around a specific medical thing, right? So it's basically building a chatbot, right? So definitely, I mean, you should be able to do that using the OpenAI's APIs. Very much possible to do that. You can use fine tuning, and RAG is another thing which is being used extensively. So that should be possible. When you are, you have what you will have as a important part of your thing is you need to have data which is labeled. So could be like, 10 to hundreds of labels. First thing I would suggest is that first go and check out whether the model that you want to use, 3.5 would be a good idea here. But I'm just saying that, let's say whatever model you want to use, you might want to go to Playground and try out different prompts to really see that what kind of questions you're looking at, and is the model even answering them today. So that would give you a baseline in a way. Then you will see that, I need something adapted to, let's say medical terminology or all of the other things. Then you will need some sort of labeled fine tuning data, which then again can be uploaded on the OpenAIs. They have a whole way of doing that. I won't get into those details, but basically you can then fine tune the model. Or you could use, if it's a big enterprise where you want to do something like this, it's a small thing, then you can just go ahead and do this. It's an enterprise level, then you might want to use RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation. So that would be another technique that could help you out there. I hope I was able to answer that question. I guess we've covered all. Yeah, in case, if anybody has more questions, which I wasn't able to answer, one I know for sure I'll get back. But there are others, then I would do reach out to me over LinkedIn. I'll be happy to get back to you guys. Okay. Well, I think I believe then we are kind of done. Yeah, I would just thank all of you to spend time here, and also again AM for giving me this opportunity to do this. I really learned a lot through this process, and I hope whatever I could share with you has helped a little bit to even understand where responsible AI comes from. So thank you, everyone. And yeah, do reach out to me on LinkedIn if there is anything else that you would like to